Have you ever delivered a burn so good that even the person it was supposed to offend was impressed? My sister was trying on really big and tacky high heels as a joke back in middle school. Mom, take those shoes off, you look like a cheap hooker. Sister, yeah, well it is take your kid to work day tomorrow. It actually was take your kid to work day the next day. But just the fact she didn't hesitate to call our mom a hooker was great. My mom didn't even get mad, she just laughed. 5 years ago my son was born. My parents were visiting us when the doctor came in to check up on him before his circumcision. She opened his diaper and said, "Wow, I have a lot to work with here." Being a wisecracker, I said, "That's hereditary." To which my dad chimed in, "Yeah, but it skips a generation." Well done, Dad. Getting ready for baseball practice, just hanging out, stretching, warming up. My catching partner pipes up. Him, "Hey Oliver, get laid recently?" Me, "Yeah, man. Had a pretty great 3-way with your sister and your mom." Him, "I don't have a sister, Dumbus." Me, "Give it 9 months." The whole pitching staff laughs their asses off, and he just shakes his head and mutters, "You dumb motherfucker." Me, "You have no idea. I'm a big man, 6 feet 4 inches and stocky. I work in an office where there happens to be a few really short guys below 5 foot tall. It so happens that one day on my way out for lunch, 3 of the particularly shortest guys were standing in hallway talking. One of them says the usual, "How's it going, big guy?" Without missing a beat, I replied, "Looks like you guys are one hobbit short of a trip to Mordor." Got a lot of laughs from them and everyone around. This happened so quickly that none of us knew who'd been burned. Bob, I just finished reading The Idiot by Dostoevsky. Me, "Isn't that the title of Frank's autobiography?" Frank, "Yeah, well, I wrote my autobiography on my dick, if you want to kneel down and read it." Me, "I'm not really into short fiction." Wasn't me, but a friend of mine pulled off the following. A bunch of British guys, including my friend, are at a conference in Berlin and having a big night out at the bar. They challenged some Germans to a beer chugging contest. The Germans win and declare, "Aha, they have beaten you at your national pastime." They are quite pleased with themselves. "That's alright," my friend replies. "We already beat you twice at yours." I will preface this by saying our house is almost all carpet with only a small area in the kitchen that is a hard floor. Therefore when our broom broke we have been just either vacuuming or wiping up things by hand in there. Mostly out of laziness to buy a new broom. Well, my mother-in-law came by one day to watch the little ones and noticed we didn't have a broom, so she decided she was going to buy us one. The next time she comes over there is a new broom leaning against the wall next to the front door. I see it as I'm going to the basement to look for something. My mother-in-law is in our kitchen and my wife walks in and says to my mother-in-law, "Why did you bring this broom?" And from the basement without missing a beat I hear her and I yell up, "That's how she got here." She took it like a champ and she laughed harder than we did. TLDR, I called my so's mom a witch and she laughed. We knew a guy who stuttered. I'll call him John. One day another friend was teasing someone who had slept with a girl who was considered a skank. He said, "She's got more STDs than John reciting the alphabet." That not only got a laugh out of everyone, including John, but also the guy who slept with a skank. I was burned so bad that I was impressed. My girlfriend and I were at a pretty busy sandwich shop and their subs came in sizes of 4, 8, and 12 inches. My girlfriend to the person taking our order, "How big is the 8-inch sub?" Me, chuckle, "It is a standard unit of measurement." Us, "What do you mean how big it is? It cannot be any more clear." GF, "Sorry, I'm used to being lied to about how big 8 inches is and want to see it for myself." 5 people in back and the roughly 10 plus customers in the area. Ha 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 ha, ouch. I was on a canoe trip with a bunch of people that I didn't know too well. I just tried to paddle hard and be useful around camp. Anyways, there was one guy there, Brandon, that just wouldn't stop talking. He had a story for everything. One night around the campfire, there's an unusual spell of silence. Everyone is quietly sitting and enjoying the night, and Brandon lets out a big loud sneeze. Everyone kind of stares at him, jokingly asking if he's okay. And I'm like, he's allergic to silence. Everyone laughed. and accepted me into their canoeing group. I have a very large friend. He was recently married. At his bachelor party, he was lying on his back on the floor while the stripper did her show. At one point, she was in the reverse cowgirl position gyrating and would bend low to really shake her ass. He was trying get a good view of her shaking and was leaning his head up to see, but couldn't since he was so large. I said, my god man, if there has ever been a time in your life to do a sit-up, it's now. The whole room erupted in laughter, including him. The stripper laughed so hard she even high-fived me in mid-dance. I'm also quite a large man, and this guy is a really good friend. We often jibe each other about our weight, but this was my best burn on him ever. My 3-year-old son and I were at a grocery store when this one woman walking with her husband decided she would be a biatch. I overheard her talking about how my son looks like a girl with long hair. I responded by telling her to glue her wig in better than maybe she could pass for one. Surprisingly, the husband laughed. 8th grade history class. My mostly bald teacher was doing a presentation and asked the class what was missing from a map he had shown. I blurted out, your hairline. He walked over. Using his hand he pulled my hair back to make me look bald on top and said, this is what bleed black will look like at your 10-year class reunion. Everyone laughed and I was a little embarrassed. Fast forward 14 years. 10-year class reunion. There were quite a few middle school and high school teachers there giving little speeches and telling memories of our class. My old 8th grade history teacher came to the mic and said, raise your hand if you were in my class with bleed black. About 25 to 30 raised their hands. Anyone notice anything missing from Mr. Black's hairline? Everyone died laughing, including myself. My half-bald self. This is my all-time best burn story, and the best part is that it was my dad that delivered the punch. Here goes. First, some background. My family is from South Carolina. My dad was an anesthesiologist, and we were on vacation in Mac. We were walking through Times Square and got a few of those handout/pamphlet things about the improv comedy clubs in the area. We decided to try one out that was nearby while we had a few hours to kill before a show. So, we go over to this hole-in-the-wall comedy club and have a couple of drinks. The room wasn't very big, with a small stage at the front and maybe 10 to 12 tables with seating for 40 to 50 people. There might have been 25 or so people on this night, with a large group of sailors that I assume were on leave. So, this last comedian comes onto the stage and is really bombing. Nobody is really laughing, and the guy is just resorting to worse material and calling out people in the audience to get some laughs. My dad thought this was pretty funny, so he's laughing the whole time and is literally the only person in the room laughing. It was a little awkward, but he has a funny sense of humor, so we weren't surprised. Well, it didn't take long for the comedian to notice he was the only one laughing and direct his attention at my dad. He took a pause and let him laugh at his last joke and stopped to ask him, "What do you do for a living, sir?" As my dad was trying to respond that he was an anesthesiologist, he just got the first part of the word out and the comedian interrupted him and said, "Wait, what? You're an asshole?" And, in probably his finest moment of witty repartee, he snapped back and said, "No, just like you, I put people to sleep for a living." Boom. The room exploded and everybody was on their feet clapping and laughing. The poor comedian just walked off the stage without saying another word. It was a proud moment for my dad, no doubt. Witnessed this one delivered to a friend of mine while we were drinking at a pub in Dublin. We go up to the bar to order some drinks. A group of us are visiting Ireland from the US during law school. One of my friends says rather loudly, "We'll have some Irish car bombs." To which an Irishman sitting next to us says, without missing a beat, "And when you're done making those, how about some 9/11s? My jaw dropped anyway. Story setup. I'm a lesbian and was meeting my girlfriend's brother for the first time. He says, "Just so you know, we are a very close family. We share everything around here, if you catch my drift." I responded, "That's great, because I've seen your wife, and I'm ready for my shot." Even my girlfriend's dad cracked up at that. Back during a high school history class, we were watching a show about Hitler's train guns, and the guy behind me loudly compared them to his dick, which I replied without skipping a beat, "You mean it's handled by hundreds of sweaty men?" He high-fived me, and even the teacher laughed. I was at a dinner party with a bunch of Ivy League students, who I normally have no problem with, but this group was really obnoxious. One girl in particular would not stop humble bragging about her fashion sense, and how she comes up with ideas that wind up becoming popular a month later. So I said to her, "It's interesting you mentioned that, because when I first met you, I thought to myself, you don't really look good now, but you will in a few weeks." Everyone in the room lost it, including the girl. The dinner party was more tolerable after that. My friend Dave was a notorious life of the party type of dude. He was known for his blue sense of humor and inappropriate behavior. I showed up sober to a large deck party, and he was drunk, doing his thing. He had a chewed up dog toy he was using as a prop in his shtick. I knew he'd eventually get to me. When it was my turn, he went into some bit on how I left my boyfriend on the floor for the dog to play with. I told him the last time I saw that particular bone I was rogering his mom with it, and that he should ask her. I timed it well, and about 20 people heard. I think that was the only time I was ever funnier than Dave. He died a couple of years ago. I miss him. Alcohol addiction is a serious disease. At one job I had a coworker with whom I would trade yo mama jokes with. One day he showed up late, and I said, "Mike, you think you can just show up 2 hours late? What the hell, man?" And he replied, "What can I say? Your mom makes a mean breakfast." He won that round. This happened in class while I was reading this thread. Teacher, anyone helping with the Special Olympics tomorrow? Student, I am. Teacher, I said helping, not participating. Followed by the class cheering. Wrecked. Background, I'm half Mexican, half Arab. I don't really even consider this a burn. I was trading insults with a coworker one day. Really, I was just swearing at him in Spanish. He looked at me and said, "Why don't you shut up? Take that towel off your head and wipe the water off your back." All I could do was shake his hand and concede defeat. When I was waiting tables, I ran food to a coworker's table. Mind you, this was at a standard family restaurant in the $5-10 per plate range. We had no Michelin stars. I took the food to the table and set it down, one at a time, starting with the hand that held only one plate, as you do. An eye roll came across the face of one of the men at the table. This man's hair color changed abruptly from brown to reddish around about the equator of his head. I thought, "Nice hairpiece, pal," to myself. And then he said, "Next time, why don't you start with the lady and always serve from the left? What kind of place is this?" To which I smiled and replied, "I'm sorry, sir. I hope you enjoy your meal. Just let your server know when you're ready to pay." You've never heard such a wonderful speechlessness in your life. His friends' faces were absolutely priceless. I had just said to him what I deduced from their painfully stifled laughter, what every person this man knows wished they could say, but never had. I don't see my brother very often. Once a year, when the two of us are in the same country, we meet in a pub, sink a few pints, and rip the piss out of each other. This happened one of those times. We'd just exhausted our standard array of insults. Motherfucking snow-blowing astronaut. You work for the council. And we're knocking our pints back in unison. I finished mine first, and my eyes fell on the TV. "Here bro, where's that tenner you owe me?" I said. "You what?" Mugged my brother. "That 10 quid for the bet you just lost. Would you on a bat?" he said, turning to me and giving me a full-on Thames Estuary leer. At this point, the two other blokes at the bar and the barmaid were looking on to see where this going. "I told you," I said, pointing at the current news item on the pub's TV, "that the Spice Girls would get back together before your ex-wife's legs would." When I was 13, I used to constantly bicker and argue with this guy in my year, him bullying me for all kinds of things and me frequently mentioning his weight as a retort. One day before geography class, he'd really got me good outside, and I'd missed the first 10 minutes with a bloody nose. In the class we were all chatting away, even though the teacher was getting ratty. I piped up, "Sir, what is for lunch today?" And he snapped back, "Ask someone who cares." I turned round quick as a flash and said, "James, what's for lunch?" Everyone loved it. He laughed, the teacher laughed, and it sort of broke the ice. We became friends and remain in sporadic contact.